What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. In this video, we are jumping into Jean Grey issue number 1. This mini-series of 4 issues picking up with Jean Grey. After the events of the Hellfire Gala, Jean's life is in shambles. Mutantkind is in dire straits, and there is nothing that this founding X-Men can do. To save Mutantkind, she must first save herself. And this means diving into her past, for the moment when it all went wrong. She does this in a desperate attempt to save her and all Krakoa's future. And so as we continue on with the fall of X, the question now being pondered, can Jean Grey escape death? Make sure you guys have subscribed to the channel, make sure that you like this video, and with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright gang, so as we dive into this issue, we start with Mind Maze. In this very moment, Jean Grey is dying. For her, this is nothing new. She has been here many times before, but right now she knows that she is running out of time. In this moment, she feels like it is her fault, that it always has been. Why else would she be here? What did she do that was so wrong that led to this inevitable event? And so she thinks. She tries to remember. If she can understand, maybe she can fix everything. But right now, she is finding it very hard to think. Her mind feeling broken, her memories scattered. With each image, a place where she chose. She could have chosen differently. Trying to grab hold, she starts at the beginning. She was born in death. At least as a mutant. When Professor Xavier offered to block out her control of the telepathy, just one of her emerging psi powers, should she have said no? In the moments that she had it blocked, she was glad that he did. And when old Hank arrived from a terrible future asking the young X-Men to travel through time to save the world, how could she refuse? They jumped right into the future, where lost in time, their presence made things worse. That's until young Cable from their future convinced them to return to their time, to the very moment that they left, to forget the future and everything that they did there. And that is what brings us to the exact moment that we are at. She does a memory wipe on all of them. Was this the moment that she was wrong? But then she thinks, what if we don't forget what happened to us? What if we need that knowledge? That they change the future now by changing their now to keep the skills that they developed and remember everything. The way that Jean saw it, this gave them a huge advantage. They have control over their powers now. They have seen in the future, a batch of futures, so they know what to avoid, like the Phoenix. They know who will be the good guys and who will be the bad guys. At least some of the people in some of the futures. This could give them a head start. This is when Professor X gets into everybody's mind and tells them to report to the danger room. Worried that Professor X is going to read their minds, Jean Grey says that she has blocked him out, at least for now. But this is what takes us over to the danger room. This is hardly a challenge for them after what they had been through, but with the training session coming to a quick end. This is because Magneto is attacking in Manhattan. And this is where Professor X learns that Jean Grey's block on her telepathy is gone, that she can now control the power. And now with her at full power, they are ready to stand against evil, telling Professor X that he will see. They make their way to Manhattan and they face against Magneto. He is saying that the humans must cease their attacks on their superiors, on Mutantkind, that what he is about to do is a retaliation for the assault on mutants, a demonstration and a warning. As he begins to snap the suspension bridge, our X-Men do everything they can to try and stop him, but we see that they are quickly wrapped up. But as quickly as they are wrapped up, we see Jean Grey able to knock off the helmet of Magneto. She tells him that he is a fanatic, a terrorist, that his threats to annihilate humanity will destroy them all. It will make people afraid, with Magneto saying that you remain Charles' stooges. Jean says that that's not exactly true, because what she is about to do, Charles would never. She has seen the terrible place that his mania will take them, and she will not allow this. With Magneto falling down to the ground, Cyclops asking what happened to him, Jean stopped him. He's alive, but he is now a blank slate. She knows where his hatred will lead. She believes that it is better this way for everybody, and changing the minds of all the local witnesses, changing their perception. Today is a win for the X-Men, the news reporters, everybody. They are all reporting that the X-Men are here to help. Weeks later, we pick up with the news talking about X-Men, talking about Mutantkind. After what had happened, the X-Men have moved out of the mansion. They made other plans using Warren's inheritance. This is when Hank comes into the room with his Cerebro, his enhanced Cerebro. This will make locating emerging mutants much easier. The improvements augment its portability and its sensitivity. In theory, it should register the first quivers of power ever to emerge. Give them the time to step in and make sure that everybody is safe. With Jean putting the helmet on, they get their first hit. A kid with psi powers. Panicking, scared, terrified. They're not sure if they can get to this kid in time, and when they head out, before they can reach the building, there is a fiery explosion. As our heroes jump in and they try to save as many people as possible, Jean Grey comes upon the boy, 12, maybe 13 years old. She stayed with him. She eased his pain. She did everything that she could do in this moment for this young boy. As we pick up later, the news reporters talking about the heroism that the X-Men did today. It is believed that this was a gas leak explosion, but we all know that this wasn't a gas leak. Only those that Jean was able to manipulate actually believe this. But they are more worried about the Sentinel robots. Trask has been making moves, and she worries that if they think that this was a mutant, then that would only solidify the Sentinels making their arrival. It doesn't take long before it is discovered that the gas leak was a cover-up. Trask calls this a mutant attack, and so he created Task Force Operation Sentinel. The Sentinels are now in the skies. Their first attack is attacking the X-Men, and the minute that a mutant power manifests, Trask will be able to get them. From their time in the future, they already know who some of these mutants will be, and so they use Cerebro to go find them. The first being Kitty Pryde. Jean Grey using her powers manipulating Kitty's parents, making them believe that she is headed off to boarding school. The next on the list is Danny Moonstar, and then Sam Guthrie. One by one, they are picking up the mutants that may be able to help them, that will have an impact in the future. Not sure where to hide these kids, they take them to Charles Xavier. Charles currently sitting down with Magneto. The two of them have been working together. Charles has been working to get Magneto's mind back. Now, while Charles goes on to say that Jean and Magneto are thinking a lot alike these days, she refutes this. She says that she is no terrorist, that she won't use her powers to kill. But Magneto says give it enough time and you will. But Jean didn't come here to argue. Jean has come to give these kids, or adults as well, over to Charles. A place where they can stay safe. But we also see the X-Men team, they split. Warren and Bobby, they refuse to carry on and follow Jean. Picking up later that evening, we are picking up with our reporter and Hank. Now, Trish and Hank, they are having a conversation about sources on evidence on news articles, so on and so forth. And while he is trying to tell her to not write these articles, that they are just fear-mongering, while they have this conversation, Jean Grey uses her powers. There will be no story written by her. And while Hank thought he was getting through to her, Jean says that she's a telepath and she would disagree. When Hank has the anger begin to get the better of him, Jean hits him with her power as well. This is where everything is starting to fall apart for her. Thinking to herself that she is a monster, that she tried so hard. She listened. She did what she could, but she was wrong. You kill a snake by cutting off its head. You stop the leaders. You make the rest afraid. But how could she do this? She is only one person. This is when she felt it begin. This is when the Phoenix begins to take over. That if she is going to save them, save all of them, she needs to become a bigger monster. She needed to be more powerful. With her newfound power, she begins to take out any with the rhetoric that would be anti-mutant. With a single thought, she is decimating her enemies. Now, the rest of the X-Men, they already know what this is. They know the Phoenix. While her motives may be pure, she is only making things worse. And the president's speech the other day, he is buying into the heightened anti-mutant hysteria, believing that maybe he might be next. With Jean no longer trying to hide her energy signal, even without Cerebro, she is not hard to miss. And so the X-Men head out, with Jean seeing so many against her. Even Magneto. Charles Xavier is trying to talk her down, while the others, they are trying to restrain her. They are trying to stop her. They use everything in their arsenal, and it is still not enough. And with all the voices in her head, everybody fighting her, it is all so overwhelming. We see a huge fiery explosion. Everything and everyone, in one fell swoop, she says to go away. And she finds herself alone. No one else with her but the Phoenix. That her idea, her willfulness, her pride, her fault. But she has learned that option no longer exists. She sees it now, the next possibility, the next choice. She knows exactly where it all went wrong. Alright gang, so as we dive into this issue, we are picking up with our girl Jean Grey. She thinks back to that day, their space shuttle with the X-Men on board. They are re-entering Earth's atmosphere, but they get hit with approaching solar flare. This would have killed anybody that was unprotected. Luckily for them, they had a shielded room, a containment room. They all felt safe inside, but when shrapnel had damaged the shuttle's autopilot, if the rest of them were to survive, one of them had to face certain death. They had to manually pilot the ship. And this story, it originally goes that Jean Grey is the one to go out there. She pulls rank on Wolverine. She attacked Scott with a psychic blast. She ensured that she would be the one to go out there. She piloted that ship down, and when it crashed, emerged the Phoenix. From the ashes, she flew out. None of them knew that she was possessed by a symbiotic power, one that drew on passion. This would thrive in the darkest corners of her soul and revel in destruction. But that was only the first encounter. Now Jean Grey, she goes back to that moment, and she sees what might have happened if she had let somebody else take over. On the space shuttle as they careen right down to Earth, Wolverine, one of the newest members on the team, he is the one to step up. And though at first she is unwilling to do so, she says okay. Wolverine takes the cockpit, while the rest of them settle down in the shielded compartment. He opens up his mind to Jean Grey, that way she can direct him in the right way. She can see through his eyes, the dials, the controls, the approaching Earth. And then the flare hits. With Scott believing that they are gonna die, he says that he loves her. In front of everybody, he kisses her, but she pushes herself away. She must focus fully on Wolverine. She needs to focus on keeping him alive, which will keep all of them alive. As the shuttle begins to break up, Jean does what she can to hold it all together. But being in the mind of Logan, she learns that his name is in fact Logan, his life flashing before her eyes. As the radiation intensifies, his healing factor struggling to repair as it is ravaged. She sees the man that he was before his powers became to be. She sees the claws, but they weren't adamantium, not yet. Then she sees military service, World War I, World War II. Now she wonders, how old is he? As she goes further, she reaches a blank. She reaches a wall that not even she can push through. The radiation is more than his healing factor can handle. She is losing him, but she refuses to let this happen. She grabs hold of his mind and pushes. She is able to break through the mind, shattering it. This reveals everything. The trauma buried deep down within inside, a secret research facility in Canada, Weapon X, Logan a prisoner, mad scientists torturing him, bonding his bone to adamantium, and then escape. Anger, destruction, and courage. He came to them looking for a safe haven, and he didn't even know that he needed one. He didn't trust the X-Men, and who can blame him? After everything that he has endured, how could he ever trust anybody again? By some kind of miracle, he had trusted her. To let her into his mind, he was willing to die for all of them, especially her. As the shuttle lands on the water, everybody comes out alive. Wondering where Wolverine might be, this is where we see him come out of the water. But Wolverine is not alone. The Phoenix Force has bonded to him. we see the spikes start protruding out of all parts of his body. The Phoenix has risen, and it takes the form of Wolverine. Now having all of his memories back, he is going to make those that hurt him pay. He is headed to Canada. And when all the X-Men get back to the mansion, Xavier talks on everything about what happened, how they're gonna go into hiding, but he doesn't mention Wolverine for a second. They don't know what happened to him. They saw the spikes sprouting out of his body and Wolverine flew. How could he possibly fly? All of these things Jean Grey thinks about, and she knows that she has to go help him. She has an idea of where he might have gone. Cyclops decides to join with her. As they arrive at the facility, the people who put adamantium in his bones, they tried to turn him into an inhuman, anti-mutant killing machine. And while Scott goes on his whole little tangent, really just being a jealous, not even boyfriend at the time, Jean says that all of this is tied to American Dark Ops, Trask and his Sentinels, other anti-mutant fascists, hate groups around the world. When Logan escaped, he had killed the leaders, but that didn't stop them. Now Jean is believing that Professor X knew about this. Maybe that's why he recruited Logan in the first place. But all of that went sideways when Logan transformed. As they peer inside the facility, they see that Logan, he was just the first. There are many other individuals that are stuck in vats. These madmen are creating an anti-mutant army. As they get inside, we see that Wolverine is just laying down the hate. The bullets hit and they burst into flame. There is no stopping him. We see that Wolverine is able to shoot spikes out of his body like projectiles. Adamantium metal spikes, and it is absolutely decimating all of the forces that are here. Wolverine doesn't even see Jean or Cyclops. He has gone full berserker and he is just decimating these ranks, completely annihilating anybody that steps in his way. An absolute bloodbath. And Jean is unable to touch his mind. The Phoenix Force is protecting it, but Jean does what she can to reach out. Just in the nick of time, he is able to stop. Jean is able to reach him, telling Jean that he was so worried he might have hurt her. What she doesn't understand is that he can't stop himself. He doesn't want to stop. He begs for them to kill him. That if you can, kill me now. Jean trying to reason with him. This is when Cyclops uses his blast, but the Phoenix Force stops it. With Wolverine's mission fulfilled, the Phoenix leaves Wolverine and it goes for a different host. Someone passionate, hungry, desperate for what is. That is when the Phoenix Force goes into Cyclops. His visor completely destroyed. This is when he gazes upon Jean. This is not a being of logic. It thrives on feeling, on Cyclops' feelings for Jean. It needs, it loves, and it wants. He doesn't want to be used by the Phoenix Force, and so he begs Jean to kill him. She says that she can't. She won't. She goes in to kiss him, and that is when Wolverine's claws go right through the back of the head of Cyclops. Wolverine knows that he can't win. There is only one way to win, and that is through death. This is when the Phoenix Force, it burns Wolverine alive, and Jean Grey can do nothing but watch. With her seeing enough of this, Wolverine seemed like the logical choice. He could survive the radiation, even survive the impact, but he couldn't survive the Phoenix. Not him, not even Scott. In her reality, she steered the shuttle. She called for help and she let the Phoenix have her. That's not where things went wrong. But if it's not then, she is wondering, then where? Alright gang, so we are diving into this with Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor. Running into Pryor, she says that every time she deals with her, things go to hell. But Jean also doesn't understand what is going on right now. One minute she is here, the next minute she finds herself in a desert. She finds chains around her neck. She quickly recognizes that these chains are not hers, but Madeline's. Madeline's memories shackling Jean Grey for a change. But this is also when she hears the voice of hope, of Exodus. As she reads Jean's mind, this is where she learns of the White Hot Room. And we saw this with Hope and Exodus. They learned where they were exiled to, though Hope doesn't fully understand this yet, and neither does Jean. Neither of them fully understand what is going on here. But Madeline says that there is no playing fair, that she would never forget what had been stolen from her, that Madeline could never forgive the disaster that is known as Inferno. And so Madeline goes down memory lane, talking about Sinister, determined to have a child that was Scott and Jean Grey, that was of their lineage. That is where he force grew Madeline Pryor. Awakened by the Phoenix Force, she emerged an empty vessel, eventually marrying Scott, producing Nathaniel Christopher. And she feels that Scott abandoned her after finding out that Jean Grey was still alive, though Jean would say that Scott left her and went looking for Madeline. But they were all told that she was dead, and in her helplessness, Madeline went seeking power. She consorted, made friends with demons and everything in between. They planned their demon invasion, and Jean tries to defend herself, because Jean and Scott were told that she was dead. Even though Scott kept looking, he eventually found Christopher, cryogenically frozen, and that is when Nanny had attacked them. They took the fight outside while demons had slipped in. They stole the child. Scott and her, distracted by the battle, they missed the demons and what they carried. This is where she wonders, what if? What if the baby had cried out? What if she had heard its psychic scream? This is where things change. Telling Scott to focus on the demon that has Christopher, Scott shoots it out of the sky, and Jean is able to catch the baby before it falls, cradling the baby in her arms. Madeline goes on to say that that necessarily won't work, that removing him from the continuity, believing that she gets a do-over, that her maternal instincts will kick in. But at this point, Madeline wants power regardless. Her rage will not be stayed. But she tells Jean Grey to go ahead and see how all this plays out. See how all of this ends. This is where we have Madeline killing the demon that failed to bring her the child. And then we have the arrival of Sinister. Sinister says that he has taken measure of Madeline and he has found her wanting. With the snap of his fingers, she is in chains. This is where Madeline Pryor learns that she is in fact a clone. With all of the demons seeing this play out, not expecting to see such weakness from the Goblin Queen. This is where the demons interfere, stopping this before it goes too far, before her will is altered. And so the demons grab hold of Sinister. We see Madeline Pryor break free. Before the demons can kill him, she says that Sinister is hers. Now understanding what she truly is. Not a mutant, not Jean Grey, but still Phoenix driven. Making a deal with the demons, she now has her own power. And the demons stand before her, saying that they will rule by her side. She wants nobody to rule by her side, she wants to rule alone. And so everybody is absolutely taken off the board. All of the demons wiped out with the flick of her wrist. Sinister taken out as well, burned to the very bones. She has truly become the Goblin Queen, and her rule now begins. As Jean and Scott make their way back into the city, they see that Limbo has come to the surface, but they don't fully understand what is going on. The only thing they know is that they must protect Chris. They get him down to the ship. They prepare to get him on board, but this is when the Goblin Queen makes her appearance. She is demanding that they hand Nathan over. Scott in complete disbelief that Maddie is still alive. They had all the evidence that she had died, but that is because of Sinister, letting them all know that they are about to die. She attacks Scott, burning him down to a crisp in an instant, asking Maddie why. Jean saying that Christopher is innocent, but the way that Maddie sees it, she made him, and she will use him how she chooses. That his death will open a portal from Earth to Limbo, and then she will rule everything. With Jean using her powers to hold back Maddie and get the baby into safety. A port opens up and little Nathan, he is stored inside. With the door slamming shut, now Jean can focus on Maddie. This is when the Phoenix Force begins to talk to Jean Grey. It's said that it brought Madeline to life. It can lead Jean back to life. But she must accept it. Must accept the Phoenix Force, the darkness and the light. But Jean refuses to be used as Madeline was. And so the Phoenix says that this is your choice. And so you will now face your death. Madeline breaking through the defenses of Jean Grey, going to siphon the energy from Jean herself. With Madeline touching the ship, we see it transform, able to control the atoms in the ship itself. We see it ripped into pieces. Now all of it an extension of herself. She causes a tidal wave and the waters begin to flow into the city. This is where she has had enough. Breaking free of all of this, she admits that she accepted the Phoenix Force. She sent the powers to others. She rejected the Phoenix power. Every choice meant death and destruction. Now she wonders, what else should I have done? Alright gang, so as we dive into this issue, we are picking up with our current day Jean Grey being yelled at by all of the different variants, the past versions of herself. She tried manipulating the timelines. She tried changing the past. And now she finds herself completely surrounded by herself. And they are all furious. They scream at her that you know why we are here. We are here because everyone is dead. Jean Grey cannot figure out why all of them are so angry, that it can't just be because they are dead. The truth is, they've been dead before. But these other versions of herself, they let her know that they are figments of her past, fragments of her nightmares. This is all products of imaginary stories that she has been telling herself, none of which are real. This is when we see the Phoenix emerge, letting her know that in the white hot room, everything is real in its own way, going on to discuss all of her efforts to try and change the past. At one point, Jean was about ready to erase the memories of the X-Men, the memories of the future that they had seen. That is, until Jean Grey had stepped in and she changed that, and they saw what happened because of it. She used these memories to forge another terrible future, that she brought the Phoenix into it, made her what she is, and everyone died, all because she didn't trust herself. Now she tries to justify it by saying that the X-Men were dead, that she had to know. Was it her fault? Could she have saved them? Can she still save them? Going on to remind Jean Grey that she is confused, because right now she is the one that is dead. By all accounts, Jean Grey has made the right decision every step of the way, that you need to trust your instincts. The truth is, you are only mad at yourself. This is where we see the Phoenix go into Jean Grey. Now, Jean Grey goes on to say that she needed to consider the ramifications, to think things through. This other version of Jean asking, why did you make me sit through watching Scott die, watching Wolverine die? I had to live that nightmare, and the memories still haunt me. And Jean apologizes, believing that she was arrogant. She stood in the X-Men's ashes and she thought maybe she was wrong. Maybe it could have been better. Maybe it wasn't all up to her. But the reality of the situation is that the Phoenix had hidden inside of her body. And so while Jean had healed in the past, it took on her aspect. It rode her anger. All of this until her true will asserted itself and stopped the Phoenix. And though she did die, that wasn't the end. They found her true body cocooned beneath the sea and they awakened her. She was returned to Scott and all was restored. How could she see this as bad? But for Jean, it's what came afterwards. The impulsive arrogance didn't work. She tried logic. But from this perspective, the reality was so much kinder to her than Madeline Pryor. This is where we see a Maddie when she was getting married to Scott. A blank slate with so many possibilities. And Jean Grey could have stopped her all those years ago. She could have called on the Phoenix, but she second-guessed herself. She questioned her priorities, and so many lives suffered because of it. The way that Maddie sees it, it is her fault. In the shuttle, the Phoenix had come to her, but Jean rejected the Phoenix, and so it found Maddie. You see, when Jean was changing things around, she didn't rewrite that scenario. She didn't make herself accept the Phoenix Force. She just shuffled the power onto Wolverine, and then to Scott. And of course, Jean Grey doesn't think that she should have taken on the Dark Phoenix, tainted as it was, with the death of millions, and then wondering, would Maddie have been better off, lacking power from any source, never alive, never feeling, no Scott, no baby Nathan, no kingdom to rule in hell. This version of Maddie reminding her that love is what Jean is all about. The Phoenix appearing back to her, letting her know that she has been creating worlds to prove that she had no choice. Nightmare tales about the Phoenix and Jean coming together. It only brought death and destruction. Damned if she did, and damned if she didn't. All paths lead to death. This is the story that she wanted to tell herself. But now Jean is starting to wake up. She's starting to remember. She remembers the Hellfire Gala. She remembers Orcus anti-mutant fanatics attacking. She tried to protect everybody, but she failed, with Moira coming in and jabbing a knife right through her back. Now Jean is wondering, why did the Phoenix not come to her in that moment? But the Phoenix says, how could I? I'm as dead now as you are. Like Jean Grey, the Phoenix only exists here in the White Hot Room, a nexus between all Phoenix hosts and the Eternal Flame. The Phoenix is only bits and pieces, currently inactive. But the White Hot Room, this is the heart of the Phoenix, but it is currently broken. So when Jean Grey woke up here, the first question she asked is, what did I do wrong? The answer is nothing. Everything that Jean Grey has gone through is because of the Phoenix. The Phoenix has been trying to show her, trying to teach her that she must trust her instincts, that her impulses were true, that she was right to do everything that she has done. The truth is, Jean Grey has done everything she could and more, but there are other forces at play, and no matter how powerful Jean Grey is, she cannot control everything. No matter what choices they make, in the end, death claims us all. Except for the Phoenix and Jean Grey. Not them, not yet, and not completely. Jean Grey says that they are not alone here, and there is one more thing that they can do. This is where we see them do it together, popping up in front of Exodus, Hope, Apocalypse. The Phoenix perched on her arm. This is where Exodus goes on to explain that the White Hot Room is a higher realm, a spiritual one, a place of primal creativity, ideas made flesh, and with Hope's power to basically mimic the abilities of others near her. There is something that Jean Grey, the Phoenix, and Hope can all do together. This is where Jean Grey touches Hope, and she is now empowered, having wings of fire, Phoenix fire. Her and Exodus together are able to take down this apocalypse, and Jean Grey has become fire and life incarnate, now and forever. Asking if she is the Phoenix? Who knows? Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. Maybe she's become something else. But today, they did no harm. And this is not arrogance. This is not her being full of herself. Jean Grey is finally following her gut. She tells the Phoenix that this isn't over. Not for the X-Men, not for Mutantkind, and not for the Phoenix and Jean Grey. But what comes next? Be it life or death, the two of them will face it together. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. This is probably the best series to be coming out of the Fall of X. I would definitely put X-Men Red above this one, but this is coming in second place for sure. More or less, Jean Grey is finally back with the Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is finally back with Jean Grey. This is a day that so many Mutants fans, so many X-Men fans, so many Marvel fans have been waiting for. The Phoenix Force has been bouncing around the last couple of years to people most of us would deem unworthy of wielding the Phoenix Force. Many individuals, to include myself, believe that Jean Grey should be the sole possessor of the Phoenix Force. And that day has finally come. Now, what that's going to look like moving forward, we really don't know yet. We don't know if Jean Grey is actually going to be dead or what the case may be. This could simply be Jean Grey's spirit binding with the Phoenix Force, and they exist in the White Hot Room, but her physical body could technically be dead. This doesn't mean that she can't be resurrected. So there are many possibilities where the Phoenix and Jean Grey don't necessarily return to the land of the living, if you will, which wouldn't be a bad way to go. If you're gonna take Jean Grey off the board, this is probably the best way that you could do it that would not only appease fans, but we would feel like it's a satisfying end to her story, even if it's the end of her just for the Krakoan era. But more than likely, we are going to see Jean Grey emerge at some point in time. Orcus is still out there. Mutantkind still has a war to fight. This was a great dissection of why Jean Grey never accepted the Phoenix Force in its totality. It was her. She was the problem all along. Her indecisiveness, her inability to make decisions on the fly, to trust her gut, to not go with her base instincts, constantly second-guessing herself. All of these things led to her being unable to control the Phoenix in the way that she should be able to. The Phoenix was trying to tell her this entire time that if you would trust yourself, not even about trusting the Phoenix Force, if you would trust yourself, you could have been wielding this the entire time. But you were so unsure of yourself all of these years that it was never able to properly bond together. But now that you have found that, through the trials and errors of your life, through your very death, you were able to discover the truth. I don't know what they have in store next for Jean Grey, but I cannot wait to see what comes. But as a fan of Jean Grey, as a fan of the X-Men titles, I say with 100% certainty, the Phoenix is finally back where it belongs. So let me know what you guys think, let me know your thoughts, let me know your theories. If you would like to get completely caught up on everything going on with this series, go ahead, check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It'll get you completely caught up on everything going on with Jean Grey and the Fall of X. If you would like to support the channel, you can always do so by joining the channel membership. Much like Patreon, having multiple different tiers, from $1 to $50, from loyalty badges to comics every single month. Not only are you helping out the channel tremendously, but you are getting tons of perks in the process. If you're unable to do this, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit that notification bell, and with that being said, until the next breakdown.